Good evening, everybody, and welcome to part two of our discussion with the one and only Lewis Brown, Bigolfish, who is our top 32 finalists of Team and Ambitions. Thank you all for joining. If you are coming to us after our deck discussion video, as you know, Lewis piloted Ruby Amethyst to a top 32, a day two finish, pulling that foil Rapunzel, foil Cinderella, and foil Let It Go promo at DLC Seattle. And of course, joining us once again, the one and only sleepyGary Dylan Lindner. How you gentlemen doing tonight?
Always good.
I'm doing just fine. Looking forward to Halloween tomorrow.
Oh yeah, it is tomorrow. It's kind of lame that it's on a Thursday. It shouldn't though. It should be a federal holiday.
Well, we'll dive into it. We're going to tonight talk about the path that Lewis took to making the top 64 and then making it to top 32 on day two. One would say possibly the pathway of least resistance that he has taken. If you had a way in which to do it, he took it. So, but we're going to go round by round, and he's going to give us some insights about the kind of decks he saw, the kind of decks that he played against, and the kind of strategies that he encountered as he made his way to the top 64. Why don't we go ahead and start with round one? Lewis, what did you end up playing in round one?
So my first round was against Red Blue, and I have to put out an immediate disclaimer. This is going to apply to all the rounds. I'm working with pretty limited notes. The rules of competitive Lorcana say that you cannot write down anything beyond like the bare information, your opponent's name, the lore totals. So a lot of this is going on recollection. I won't be able to give a turn-by-turn breakdown, but I can look at the numbers and be like, yes, this is kind of how it went. So my round one opponent was on Red Blue versus DK. I did win the die roll, so I was going in first game one. And just looking at the lore totals, it ended 20-3. Cool. I distinctly remember that he was having a real rough time. He was very down on his Grammatalas, not so much down on the card itself, but in every position where he would much rather be playing a Hiram Flaversham, he was having to play a Grammatala. And because I'm not on the Flynn Rider variant of Red Purple, that turn 3 Grammatala is just a lot less scary to me. It's just like, okay, you played a 3/3, it got you a card, yeah, nice. But I'm just going to turn Cusco sideways. In both games, I really just grabbed the tempo and did not let him get it back at any point in time. He did all the red-blue things that he could, brawling his own Medusas, his Be Prepareds. But because he never had like a great stellar kickoff card, he was always a little bit behind me in cards in hand. And I just had the resources to finish the game before he could get into the Tamatoa winning and over 2 turns territory. I also want to give a big shout out to DK. He found me after round 4 and came and apologized to me if he had seemed a little salty after I beat him, which first of all was not necessary. He was perfectly fine at the end of the game, but that was very kind of him to come and say to me anyway. I really appreciated it. And after that round 4, he was 3-1 with only the single loss to me. So clearly he dusted himself off and got right back in that saddle. So good for him. It was very, very nice of him to come up and say that to me.
I love that kind of sportsmanship. It's just like, it was like, hey, just in case, I do apologize. It's not who I am. And clearly he was a good opponent. So that's awesome. I love to see that kind of sportsmanship.
Yeah, I was not surprised at all to hear that he was 3-1 from the get-go. As soon as the way you can tell immediately an experienced player, the way they shuffle their cards, the way they think through the decisions. He knew what he was doing. He just got some bad beats. But again, even though it was not necessary, I really appreciated him coming up and saying that to me. Because a lot of people just wouldn't, and it was very kind of him to do.
I think a thing that we've always been saying about Red Blue is that that's a deck that will oftentimes lose to itself. And it almost sounds like that's kind of what happened here, is that he just had a couple of bad beats. And Red Purple is the kind of deck that, hey, if you stumble, I'm just going to take advantage of you.
Yep, 100%. The only really specific play I can remember being very impactful was at one point I had played a Merlin Crab just to have something on the board, I think. But then a second Merlin Crab for my hand let me challenge and take out a Flaversham, which otherwise I would have had difficulty dealing with. So again, very, very glad that I had Crab in my deck for that weekend. And then we're just going to move right into round 2. Round 2, my opponent's name was Randy. I was on the play here again, although I actually lost the die roll. He chose to give me the play, which I kind of wish I had picked his brain about why he chose to do that. But that's just what happened. But he was on green steel, so this was going to be my toughest match right off the bat. As soon as he opened up with a green card, I believe even though I went first, he did open up with the one cost Diallo. I mean, I knew it was going to be an uphill battle. The key was that I don't even want to use the word stumbled because he certainly played on curve. He just didn't have the Diablo shift line right away. In either game. Game one, looking at my notes, it ended 20-0. So he was just unable to put anything forward. I believe because in game one, I opened with Chernobog followers, and although he opened with the small Diablo, he wasn't comfortable turning it sideways because he was like kind of saving it in case he drew the shift Diablo. Was kind of my read of why he wouldn't have quested at least once with it. And he just didn't get the engine going. He never had the Prince John Ursula singing engine really going. He played stuff like 5 ink to play the Ana to discard a card and put some presence on the board. But as soon as Green Steel doesn't open with the Diablo shift line, the game is just so completely different as the red purple player. It is just I can't say it in any other way. It's a completely different matchup. Yeah, and I mean, looking at my game two. Sorry to interrupt. I'm just gonna say what happened in game two. Looks like he only gained a single lore in that game as well. So I mean, he definitely just variance was not kind to him. He was also a good player. I don't know how he did for the rest of the day, but you could just tell that he knew what he was doing. One thing that I thought was interesting, I distinctly remember this in game two, is he opened up with the Cove on turn one, and then turn two played Diablo, the small Diablo, and moved it, which what told me was he didn't have the shift line, but he delayed it by one turn to have the most up-to-date information about my hand that he could have, right?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, especially because on an empty board, like playing the Cove is not bad. If you're expecting the Brawl too, because then you can like shift onto it and then it's out of Brawl range. But would you say him passing priority to you on the die roll like affected your decision trees a lot?
I mean, yes and no. So I wasn't really sure what to make of it. We had discussed as a team how like if someone gives you the play first, it can be a big signal that they might be on the hyper aggro list. Because sort of hyper aggro wants to give you the play first because you're not sure what to mulligan for. Whereas in game two, like, oh, I got to be mulling for aggro. So I actually didn't really know what to make of it, particularly that early in the day, because it's not like a crazy thing for people to give you the first game regardless. There's value in chasing the game two tiebreaker, as tertiary as that tiebreaker is. It is a 0% chance of helping your placements. Let's move just right into round 3 versus Tolga. This was my first red-purple mirror of the weekend. No, actually, not. I'm sorry, not of the weekend because I played in the Friday competitive constructed. But the first red-purple mirror of the day on Saturday. I did win the die roll again, so I've gone first in all 3 matches, even though I lost the die roll. So, I mean, obviously, to me, that's always going to be my preference, so I was quite happy. The first game finished 20-5, so I'm pretty confident that I just took the advantage and immediately ran away with it. Looking at how the numbers worked out, it looks like he did not have Flynn Rider on turn 2, or if he did, I countered it immediately. He never got a trigger. I know he was on the Flynn Rider version as opposed to the Cusco's, but I think, on the play, it's just tough. And I think I just took the tempo and kind of never let him have it back. Looking at the second game where I was on the draw, he definitely got 2 separate Flynn triggers. I'm looking at him going from 1 lore to 4, and then from 4 to 7. And once the second Flynn trigger had resolved, I thought I was cooked. And, that would have been a 1-1 split, not the end of the world. But I again, my notes are lacking because I'm not allowed to take notes that I would like to. But I think his follow-up to the second Flynn trigger just wasn't great. I can't tell you specifically what I did to claw that back, but it looks like it ended about 20-14. So he was definitely, putting on a fight. But I just had the cards to be able to squeak it out. I do distinctly remember that we both played at least one Finders Keepers, so we were both kind of keeping up with each other in terms of card draw. And I just think I believe that he had to be prepared me before I had to be prepared him, which in the mirror is often, that's really how you win the mirror, is you make them be prepared you. You do not want to be the person who be prepared first, for sure.
So I think it's important to discuss why is it bad to be the first person to pull the trigger on a be prepared. And it really comes down to me as your opponent has to spend their entire turn, because Red Purple doesn't really sing be prepared, they just hard cast it. I have to spend my entire turn dealing with your board state, and how do you get to respond is just to rebuild it. So you could do something like play more dudes or play a Queen's Castle, and it's like, well, now I don't have a board because I was the one that first had to play the be prepared in order to deal with your board state. So usually it's kind of like whoever flinches first kind of gets the price paid for it.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And I mean, you got to do what you got to do. Him be preparing whenever he did, I'm sure was the correct decision. But as soon as you come to the realization that this is the right thing to do, you're thinking, oh man, if he responds with Queen's Castle and like a character, this is going to be really tough for me.
Yeah.
Then let's just move straight on to my round 4 opponent, Jose, another red purple mirror. And this is the match that I am definitely going to remember from the whole weekend. These were some crazy games. Jose played incredibly well. I distinctly remember we were both very hyper aware of the time and playing as efficiently as possible, not even having to be like, hey man, play faster. We were both super on the ball. We knew exactly what was going on. And I'll go ahead and brag a little bit that this match, specifically game 2, was the game that caused the judges to put the marking tape on the floor to kind of keep the spectators away from the table, which I thought was really cool. We definitely had a crowd around us, particularly since we were at the top tables. I think I was at table 3 at that point. So that was really cool. Just really, really incredible games. Looking at these lore totals, game 1, I was on the play once again, so I definitely had some luck this weekend with the die rolls. Game 1 ended 20-16, so that was for sure anyone's game. If the order of when we had drawn our goats was a little different, who knows how that could have gone. And then game 2 of this match, it's what I'm going to remember for the rest of my Lorcana career. Just an absolutely incredible match, back and forth. Him on the play, he definitely opened up with the Flynn Rider line. I can see him going from 1 lore to 4 immediately. So that's just how it went. I can't remember exactly the next couple of turns because this game went very, very long. We went to time and went to turns. At one point, I know I had at least 13 or 14 ink. We both did. So this game was really back and forth. But yeah, so after the early lead, he definitely pulled forward with Flynn. I was able to get back into it. And I remember when I was around about 10 lore, I made the distinct decision to not take my foot off the gas, but ease up a little bit and conserve my resources a little bit. I was at the point where I was controlling the board. I had, I believe, both a goat and a rabbit in hand, so I could go either all in or kind of conserve myself. And just the way he wasn't out of enough resources that I was confident just full sending it. So I pulled back a little bit, started drawing some cards while still consistently gaining a couple of lore each turn. And one distinctive line that I got to pull off, I'm so happy. It was incredibly relevant. I played on 13 ink. I played Lady Tremaine. Did Lady Tremaine on top of Lady Tremaine. And then I played Madame Fox to pick them both up. And at that point, the game was all but locked. He knew I was holding the spot removal that he has to play around. I could very possibly still have Be Prepareds in my hand. At that point, with the knowledge he had, it was going to be very, very tough for him. Although full credit to him, he did not give up for an instant. I'm looking at the lore totals. He ended up with 17 lore before I won. So it was down to the wire for sure. Something I can say that came in very relevant was that he had to ink, I believe, 2 of his Maui Hero to Alls, which ended up being very, very relevant in the later stages of the game.
And you said you guys went to turns too?
Yes, I believe I won on turn 3 of turns.
Jeez. 13.
Yeah, so it was
natural. That's crazy.
Yeah, and again, I want to emphasize Jose played so well. We were both hyper aware of the time, playing as efficiently as we could so that we got the maximum amount of time. I actually, in retrospect, I was turn 0, so 1, 2, 3. I might have won on turn 4 of turns. So we needed all that time. and he played masterfully. I'm never going to forget those games. Jose, if you happen to be watching, great games, man. Hope to see you at the next TLC.
Yeah, I remember watching you during that game. We were all in your way as you were looking at the time. I think it was like 5 minutes left of the time. You're just like, the tape was already up, but we were still in front of the timer. And then I think the judges came and said, "You guys can't actually block the timer." And it's like, "But we're in the lines." But anyway, and then you pulled off the Tremaine bounce move, and at that point, I think you had like a location out, and it was just churning you away, and you had the removal in hand. And I remember me and fellow teammate Brandon were just like, I think he has it. I think he has it. But you were not letting a single ounce of any sort of security off of your face. It was locked in. Lewis is focused here. And to sneak it out on the last possible turn to 2-0 is incredible. I think that speaks to how well you counterplayed your mirrors.
And I will say the reason I chose to play like that is playing the deck I know very well. It is not over until it is over. There were definitely lines that he could have had that if I played a little more sloppily, he could have easily turned the tables on me. And I just didn't want to let that happen. So even though there's a world where I could have played and maybe won a little bit faster, I wanted to eliminate any level of that variance and just lock it in.
I think that shows respect to your opponent too, knowing that like, hey, if I make a mistake, you're going to punish me for this, so I'm just not going to play any form of mistake. So that's good that you not only did that for yourself, but also it shows how strong your opponent was, because you're just like, I know he's going to capitalize on this, and I got to respect that.
Yeah, you are 100% correct. I knew that if I stumbled a little bit, he easily could have taken advantage of that. Just didn't let him. And yeah, just really incredible games. Incredible games, Jose. Well played. Following that, we're going to move into my last Swiss round of the day because, spoiler alert, I won and then intentionally split the last 4 rounds. This was versus Hector. I'm going to go ahead and name him. This was Hector de la Cruz. I feel comfortable naming him because he also ended up making day 2. So clearly I was not a big stumbling block for him. This was my first game where I was on the draw. Granted, in best of 2, not as hugely relevant as in best of 3, but still wasn't happy on it. But he was on the red-blue deck, which is obviously the matchup that I'm most hoping to see. It's where red-purple is particularly favored. It's not free by any stretch of the imagination, but it is the matchup that you most like to see. Again, looking at my game 1 notes, such as they are, on the draw, I ended up winning 17-1, and then on the play, I ended up, I was at 17 when I stopped keeping track, so presumably I gained 3 lore and 1. And then I have game 2 written down as 19-0. I distinctly remember his engine was just not firing. I'm not going to say this was a free win, because, yeah, his engine just was not firing. I distinctly remember in game 2, his turn 1, he had to ink a Hiram Flaversham, which it's either a sign they have a second one or they're in dire straits. As it turned out, it was the latter. He never found an item that Hiram would have even been able to eat for 2 cards. This was not a knock against Hector's skill at all. Clearly, he made day 2. He was doing great. His deck just got hit by the variance and it couldn't quite get there. And the red-purple is the deck that will punish you if you stumble. That's what it's designed to do. That's exactly what I did. I remember at one point, I think he be prepared my board, like a very good be prepared, but I had the follow-up of a Queen's Castle and the library, and it's just, yeah, it's the line that they least want to see. I really want to emphasize how he did everything he could, but at one point, I was up in lore, I had the board presence, I had 4 cards in hand to his 2. It just was what it was. But again, clearly he made day 2 himself. I looked up, but don't remember if he won his day 2 first match. But either way, a great accomplishment from him. So yeah. And then, like I said, following that, I was able to intentionally split all the way through round 9. I will say round 6, there were only 3 players who were 5-0 at the time. It was me, the person I got matched against, melee named Oberon. He's on what's the team that's based in, I want to say, Chicago? They have like blue jerseys.
Not too sure, but hey,
Cerberus.
if you're watching this video,
Yeah,
comment.
shout out to you. You were really nice. But then the other 3-0 was Kendall. No, I'm not, the RP master himself. So being seated next to him was really cool. Definitely being at table 1 was really cool. Definitely gonna remember how that felt for a while. And then so there was a bit of anxiety because, you know, every single round my opponent could very well want to play it out for seeding, and I wouldn't have been able to blame them for that. That's a totally viable thing for them to want to do. Fortunately, everyone just agreed to the split, so I never had to worry about it. But it was a little weird to show up to the tables within like a couple of minutes, be like, all right, cool, split, thanks very much, see you later, and then kind of wander around for an hour and change, not sure if that was going to happen again for the next subsequent rounds. But it worked out. Ended up in day 2. I was in, I want to say, 24th place, so I was guaranteed the turn to be on the play in the first round. And we knew who my opponent was. We knew it was going to be another red-purple mirror. With that, I'll just jump right into round 1 of top 64. This was against Archer. Like I said, I had the higher seed, so I was on the play in the red-purple mirror. And looking at the deck list the night before, the big thing going in here was that he was on 0 Merlin Crab, which in the mirror is not good. There's certainly an argument to be made to cutting Merlin Crab from your deck. It's not a crazy thing to do, but when you're in a red-purple mirror and your opponent has Merlin Crab and you don't, things are very, very difficult. Both for like the standard trading, there's a lot of trading, and the fact that there is no possible way that a single character rush character in particular, can one-shot my locations. You can't go Maui or Fox in with Crab to combo to immediately remove it. It just, I can play a Queen's Castle on an empty board, and I know that it is going to survive that turn, unless they do something really crazy like 1-drop into double Fox, which if they spend their entire turn doing that, that's fine with me. Right. So even going in, I felt really confident. Looking at the score totals, I really just took control and won right away. It looks like I ended game 1 20-5 and ended game 2, even though I was on the draw, 18-8. I can say specifically in game 2 where things turned. We both went 1-drop into 2-drop. He played his Flynn, but his turn 3 was hard casting friends on the other side.
No
Sisu. That's just not where you want to be in the mirror. I'm sure it was the best possible thing for him to be doing, but yeah, as soon as he did that, and I responded with my own turn 3 Sisu, and from there the tempo was just so firmly in my favor. Archer was just never able to recover. But really good games. Congratulations to him for making top 64. I hope that still comes across from sincere from the guy who beat you. But you played really great. It is what it is.
Yeah.
And then, unfortunately, we come to the end of our story. Round 2 versus Alex, who was on Amber Steel aggro, not Steel Song. I refuse to call it Steel Song because it does not contain a whole new world, although it certainly shares a lot of the same cards. Then again, the night before, we were looking at my possible matchups. We knew the possible matchups were either Alex on Amber Steel aggro, where I would have the higher seed and be going first. But honestly, what we really would have much preferred is if Alex had lost to his opponent, who was another red-purple with 0 Crab. And even though I would have been on the draw game 1, I would have much, much rather had that matchup. I'm not surprised that Alex beat him, even though Alex was on the draw game 1 in that matchup. He brought a really cool off-the-beat deck. He piloted it masterfully. I am going to complain again. This is not a knock to Alex. He was a great player. He played really well. But game 1, where I was on the play, this is without exaggeration. This is a genuine statement. I bricked harder than I have ever bricked in a game of Lorcana. I distinctly remember my opening hand. My opening hand game one was 2 Madam Mim snakes, a Be Prepared, a Queen's Castle, a Sitting Lady of some kind. I don't remember which one. And then my last 2 cards were Rabbit, which we would normally always keep on the in this game, but versus aggro, not where you want to be. And then I want to say a like a Maui or something that was just too slow for what it was gonna do. So I sent back all 7. I'm sure there are people who like, you should have kept a couple to like be safe with ink, and they're probably right. But I just felt, knowing I was against aggro because it's open deck lists, that I needed to send everything back. And what I drew were 4 uninkable cards. I want to say maybe a Brawl, and then the other 2 Madam Mim snakes. So my first 2 turns were Ink Snake Pass. My turn 3 was Ink Brawl to play a Sisu to hope to claw back some tempo, but unfortunately he had the Cinderella Ballroom Sensation to sing, let the Storm Rage on to put 2 damage on it, and then he had his one of Fire the Cannons to finish off the Sisu while still developing another character. He just had it. Variance caught up to me. It was my game to lose. It just was what it was. Following that, game 2, I managed to win this. Looking at my notes, he got up to 19 lore in game 2 before I was able to stabilize and squeak it out. It helps that his version, unlike, say, some of the purple aggro decks, has no reach, which is to say he has no ability to gain lore from hand with like Merlin Goats or Gathering Wisdom and Knowledge and so on and so forth. So as long as he doesn't have a character ready to quest, I had a little bit of breathing room. And then finally, game 3, he went first, aggro going first. It's going to be scary. He opened up with a Daisy. It was scary. I will say, I think I had as good an opening hand for the aggro matchup as I could have. I had a 1-drop, I had a Cusco, I had a Crab in hand to turn the Cusco into a Daisy killing machine. It went as well as I could have, but I could not quite stabilize. The very last turn, I played a Finder's Keepers to dig for a Brawl to remove his Singleton Daisy that would have at the very least kept me in the game. But at the end of that game there, it was 20-9. So he had a number of turns where I had to always have the answer to everything he played. And yeah, he played it extremely well. It was a matchup I knew was unfavorable. But Alex played it really well, and I wish him the very best of luck at Continentals at Disneyland. You will have at least one person rooting for you, Alex. So go in there with that confidence.
Kind of add on top of your matchup, I actually ended up talking to Alex because he was homies with one of my opponents in the 8 a.m. Sunday tournament, and I was talking to him about your game, and he said, like, that Daisy play, he said if you had a Medusa or anything to just destroy the Daisy, he was cooked. He said like his hand was a bunch of uninkables that couldn't interact with you at all, and he was really hoping to dodge the red chair lady, but unfortunately he just never got it. So you came real close to stabilizing, but unfortunately the draw assist didn't line up. But he said he was really sweating that 3rd game against you.
Yeah, well, that's very kind of him to say. Yeah, I definitely had plenty of outs I could have drawn. The chances were there. It just the odds were not in my favor ultimately. And that's okay. I definitely had some good luck getting there, and you got to take the good with the bad, right? So I'm very pleased with how I performed. Am I a little bummed that I missed out on the Invitational by 1 win? Of course, but again, Alex absolutely deserved it. Fighting his way up there. And I believe, I actually want to shout out his record. I believe like throughout the entire day, he went like 1 win, 1 split, 1 win, 1 split, 1 win, 1 split. So unlike me, who just went 5-0 and drew in, he was battling the whole 9 rounds. Just an incredible performance by him.
I do think it's really interesting that the first time you see Amber Steel, it's that Amber Steel and not a typical Amber Steel that we're all familiar with, which I saw a ton of. Dylan, I don't know how much you saw of, but Steel Song was rampant at DLC Seattle. So the fact that you didn't see it at all and then saw that version of Amber Steel is just wild to me. Variance is crazy.
Yeah, for sure. I have nothing to add to that. You're simply right. And I definitely got a little lucky with my matchups in the sense that I only saw green steel the single time in round two. If I had happened to have beaten Alex, I was still I think on the other side of the bracket from all the green steel players. I won a bunch of mirrors that weekend, so that's I feel pretty good about that. But yeah, unquestionably got a little bit lucky, got a little bit good, tooting my own horn a little bit. But yeah, it's always a combination. There's times where you can just look back and be like, yeah, the cards were just not falling in my direction, and sometimes you just have to accept that.
So,
Yeah.
Lewis, give us some insight into, as you look back now on DLC Seattle, it is now in your rear view mirror, and now you can kind of look back at your performance, your deck choice, the decisions that you made. I mean, you went into Friday with not performing the best with red purple. So to stick with red purple going into the main event, and then exceeding in the way that you did you have any reservations going into the main event that maybe the Friday test wasn't as strong as it could have been?
I mean, the Friday definitely could have gone better. I will say I can't distinctly say I did poorly in the Friday competitive constructed. Going into round 7, I was in the Thunderdome territory, which is to say that both my opponent and I had to win out to continue to be in viable ticket range. So at the very least, I was in it for the majority of the event. Didn't end up placing there, so which is why I can say I didn't do great. But all the testing I was doing, the primary testing was I enjoying Cusco over Flynn, and the conclusion there was solidly yes, Cusco is good. I'm glad to be on Cusco. The big last second innovation was definitely adding the 2 of Finders Keepers to my deck. It was extremely good against me. I saw how people were playing with it, and even though I didn't have any reps on it, it felt like I think I need these cards in my deck, or I'm going to be at a big disadvantage, which ended up being true in most of my matches. Certainly in all of my mirror matches, they were all on Finders Keepers, and if I didn't have the Finders Keepers, I think those games would have gone very differently. So ultimately, I'm glad with where I landed. I'm very glad I did the Friday event to test it out and get some practice in. Obviously, did I outperform how I thought I was going to do based on how my Vegas performance went? Sure. But yeah, I gotta say I have no regrets. If I had to do it all over again, I really do think I would sleeve up the exact same 63 card special.
Do you have any advice to people who are because you were cool as a cucumber going into your matches, and some people might be feeling the pressure. Do you have any advice to players who are wanting to do the same that you did?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely have a bit of a decent poker face, particularly after round 4 when it was becoming more and more real. I was feeling the pressure a little bit. We actually had a pretty significant delay in the tournament, which was very helpful to me to like take a couple of laps, calm myself down.
Mm.
Uh, but really, I think you guys kept saying this to me every time. The tournament starts over every time. And once you're winning, going into round 4. All right, now it's just a 6-round tournament. Now you just got to win. Or there's just it's a 1-round tournament. You just got to win. Really, this is kind of terrible advice, but just don't think about it. Go in as if it's the first round. You have the whole day ahead of you. Particularly the position I was in. Even if I lost 0-2, I was still not anywhere close to finish. That is certainly a helpful thing to have in the back of your head. Like, worst case scenario isn't that bad, right? And really, it's just once you get all the jitters out between round and try to have at least a couple of minutes to go to the bathroom. I will say that I drank so much water out of the water stations. I was going back for cups constantly, just keeping yourself hydrated, give your mind something to focus on other than what you're about to do. And yeah, I mean, genuinely, if I can do it, I think anyone watching here should be able to do it. And yeah, just keep on playing as if you're at your locals and there's nothing on the line. Because as soon as you start thinking about, oh, what do I gain? What do I lose? That's what would send me into the spiral of not concentrating on my play.
Yep. At the end of the day, 1 round at a time. You only play theoretically 9 different people on day 1, and with any luck, 5 different people on day 2. Well, that will wrap it up for our discussion with Lewis Brown about his top 32 performance. If you have any comments or questions that you would like to address, to Lewis, please drop it in the comment section and let us know in person. Let us know in Discord. We're pretty active on there. So please join it and communicate with us. We would love to hear from you. We will wrap up our discussion of DLC Seattle with the rest of the team a little later. For now, you all have a good night.
Bye.